Clara adjusted her glasses as the morning sunlight pierced through the sheer curtains of her flat in Bath. The scent of toast lingered from the cafe downstairs, but her stomach churned with a strange mix of excitement and dread. Today was her 29th birthday, and she had promised herself not to expect anything. Yet, part of her still hoped that Imogen, her older sister, always polished and proper, might surprise her. Not with grand gestures, just something sincere. Something that said, "I see you, Clara." At noon, Imogen arrived at the door with her usual grace, her heels tapping the wooden floor as if announcing superiority. She handed Clara a small white envelope with a gold logo embossed on the front. Clara's smile faltered as she opened it. It was a gym membership. "To Eden Wellness Club," Imogen said, sipping her oat milk latte without sitting down. "They specialize in transformation. Mental, physical, emotional. I thought you could use it." Clara blinked, unsure if she was supposed to thank her. "You mean, for me?" Imogen offered a tight smile. "Of course. Consider it a gentle nudge in the right direction." That night, Clara sat on her bed staring at the membership card. The gold print shimmered mockingly under her bedside lamp. Transformation, it said, in serif lettering. As if she were some failed prototype. Her phone buzzed. "Imogen. Just booked your first session. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. No excuses." The next morning, Clara stood before the glass doors of Eden Wellness Club. The building was sleek and modern, tucked quietly between a bookshop and an apothecary near the edge of Bath's historic quarter. Inside, the air smelled of lavender and something sterile. A receptionist in white greeted her with a smile too bright to be real. "Welcome, Miss Clark. We've been expecting you." Her stomach knotted. She didn't like that sentence. It made the place feel less like a gym and more like a waiting room for something else. The receptionist handed her a digital keycard and pointed her towards the locker rooms. "Your induction will be in Studio 3. Take the corridor to the right, past the glass wall." Clara followed the direction but stopped as something caught her eye. Beyond a frosted pane, just past the yoga rooms, was a door, tall, old, and out of place. Unlike the sleek glass and chrome everywhere else, this door was wooden, dark, with a tarnished brass handle. It looked like it belonged in a Victorian library, not a wellness spa. Curiosity prickled her skin. She moved closer, pretending to adjust her shoelace as she peeked at the door. There was no sign. Just a small brass keyhole and a faint engraving beneath it, nearly faded with age. She reached out to touch the handle. "Miss Clark." A man's voice startled her. She turned to see a trainer, tall and broad-shouldered, in a dark gray polo. His face was kind, his expression unreadable. "I'm Mason. I'll be guiding your session today. Shall we begin?" Clara cast one last glance at the strange door before nodding and following him down the corridor. But she didn't know then, that door would not only unlock her muscles. It would unlock her past. Clara's legs ached. Her arms trembled. Mason had taken her through a circuit that made her question every choice that had led her to this exact moment. Still, there was something reassuring in the way he guided her. No judgment. No remarks about her body. Just calm, clear instruction and subtle encouragement. She wasn't used to that. Not from family, not from strangers. After the session, Mason handed her a bottle of water and a towel. "You did well," he said. "Better than most on their first day." Clara offered a faint smile, too winded to speak. As she dabbed sweat from her forehead, her eyes drifted again toward the corridor, the one with the strange door. "Curious?" Mason asked, following her gaze. She looked away, embarrassed. "It just looks out of place." Mason hesitated. "That section of the building's off limits. Old storage, I think. Nothing for members to worry about." But Clara wasn't so sure. As she made her way to the locker room, she noticed something odd, a subtle vibration underfoot as she neared the door again. Like low music, or perhaps, voices. She paused, ear tilted slightly. For a moment, she heard a whisper. Muffled, but distinct. It didn't sound like a recording. It sounded like someone was pleading. Suddenly, the door behind her clicked open. It wasn't the old wooden one, but the glass door leading to the massage therapy rooms. A staff member stepped out, startling her. "Need help finding the showers?" The woman asked politely. Clara nodded quickly and followed, her heart thudding. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. Her thoughts looped like a broken reel. Imogen's smirk, the gym's perfect facade, Mason's guarded tone, the strange vibration. The whisper. She sat up and grabbed her laptop. She typed, Eden Wellness Club history. The screen lit up with glowing reviews, articles in fitness magazines, a feature on Bath's elite self-care revolution. But as she scrolled, a single forum post caught her eye. Eden Wellness isn't what it seems. Ask about the door. The post was 2 years old. The account had been deleted. The next morning, Clara arrived earlier than scheduled. The receptionist blinked, surprised, but said nothing as she checked in. She waited until Mason was distracted giving instructions to another client, then walked swiftly down the corridor. Past the yoga studio. Past the frosted glass. Toward the door. It loomed taller than she remembered. She reached out. The handle was cold. She twisted it, locked. But as she leaned in, another whisper slithered through the keyhole. Louder now. Clara. Help me, please. She stumbled back. Someone had said her name. Clara couldn't shake the voice. It haunted her through the day, on the bus, in the queue at Tesco, even as she tried to focus during a Zoom call. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard it again. That whisper. Her name. It wasn't her imagination. It couldn't be. Later that week, she returned to Eden Wellness under the pretense of another training session. Mason greeted her with his usual calm demeanor, but Clara noticed he kept checking his watch. Distracted. Nervous, maybe. After a round of stretching, she feigned a sore ankle. Mind if I sit this one out? Mason frowned. You okay? Just a little sore. I'll cool off in the steam room. He nodded, slightly relieved. Sure. Don't overdo it. But Clara didn't go to the steam room. She took a left at the reception, past the staff kitchen, and slipped through the stairwell that led down to the lower level. The door to the forbidden corridor was there, thicker than the others, with a strange pattern etched into the paint. Swirls. Circles. Symbols? She placed her palm on the wood. Cold. Still locked. Then, she noticed something. A hairline crack beside the frame. Almost invisible, but wide enough to wedge a coin. Her heart pounding, she fished a pound from her pocket and slipped it in. Click. The door creaked open. Inside, the air was heavy. Not just with dust, but silence. That thick, smothering kind of silence that makes your skin prickle. The corridor was lined with mirrors, not on the walls, but stacked along the floor and propped in corners. Most were covered in thin white sheets, but a few were bare, reflecting dim light from a flickering bulb above. She stepped forward. The floor groaned beneath her feet. One mirror caught her attention. A tall, cracked frame with tarnished silver edges. She moved closer, and there it was again. The whisper. Clara. But this time, it didn't come from behind her. It came from inside the mirror. She froze. The reflection didn't match her posture. Her mirrored self leaned forward, lips moving. Help me. Clara gasped and stumbled back. Her shoulder brushed another uncovered mirror, and the glass rippled, like water disturbed by a pebble. Footsteps echoed behind her. Clara turned quickly, but saw nothing. Still, the pressure in the room changed. Like someone had entered and was watching. She turned back to the cracked mirror, and saw, just for a second, a name scrawled in condensation across the surface. Lydia. She didn't know a Lydia, but the name burned in her mind like fire. The next morning, Clara couldn't concentrate at work. Her boss, Miss Harrow, asked twice if she was unwell. She replied with a smile and lied that she'd caught a cold. But truthfully, she hadn't slept. The name Lydia had replayed in her dreams, over and over, accompanied by flickering images of that cracked mirror and the whisper that chilled her spine. By lunchtime, Clara was back at Eden Wellness, sitting in the juice bar with a notebook and her phone. She had one goal: find out who Lydia was. She tried asking the receptionist, Eloise, a bubbly redhead always too eager to chat. Has anyone ever mentioned the name Lydia here? Clara asked casually, pretending to stir her smoothie. Eloise paused, frowning. Lydia? I don't think so. Doesn't ring a bell. What about any staff member in the past? Or maybe someone who used to train here? Eloise leaned closer. Are you doing some sort of investigation? Clara smiled faintly. Something like that. Eloise chuckled but didn't seem convinced. Well, we have a lot of old records locked in the basement. You'd have to ask Mason if you want to dig through that mess. That evening, Clara lingered after her training session. She approached Mason, who was cleaning weights in the back room. I need a favor, she began. I want to see the staff archives. Mason looked up sharply. Why? I saw something. A name. I need to know who she is. He hesitated. It's not a good idea, Clara. Please. You know something, don't you? There was a long silence. Finally, he dropped the towel and motioned for her to follow. They descended a narrow staircase behind the laundry room. The walls were damp. Pipes ran overhead, dripping occasionally. At the bottom was a heavy door with a faded plaque. Archive room. Mason unlocked it with a long, rusted key. Inside was a maze of filing cabinets, rolled-up posters, and old fitness trophies. Dust hung thick in the air. Clara's eyes scanned the shelves, until something caught her attention. A large gilded frame wrapped in brown paper, leaning against the far wall. She pulled at the wrapping. It revealed a portrait. A woman with dark curls. Olive skin. A soft but sad expression. Beneath it, in faded ink, Lydia Moreland, 1983. Mason stood frozen behind her. She was one of the first members, he said quietly. Back when this place was just a private club. She went missing. Clara turned to him, stunned. Missing? No one ever found out what happened to her. One night, she just vanished. Some said she ran away. Others said she was taken. Clara stared back at the painted eyes. They were haunting. Familiar. And in the stillness of the room, she could almost hear the whisper again. Clara stood in front of the mirror in her flat that night, unsure what she expected. She'd brought the portrait of Lydia home, an impulsive decision she now regretted, but couldn't undo. It leaned against the far wall, half shrouded in its brown paper wrapping once more. Rain pattered against the windows. The lights flickered once, then again. Clara lit a candle, just in case. She sat on her bed, staring at the mirror. The same mirror from the gym had begun to appear in her dreams. And in those dreams, Lydia always stood behind her. Never moving, never speaking, just watching. But tonight, Clara wanted her to speak. She approached the glass. Slowly. Every footstep felt like a challenge to her nerves. Lydia, she whispered. What happened to you? Nothing. Only her reflection. But then, a ripple. It was quick. Subtle. Like a breath across the surface. Clara gasped. She stepped back, heart thudding. Lydia, she said again, louder. The air around her seemed to grow heavier. The candle flickered violently. And then behind her in the mirror, a shadow moved. Not hers. She turned. Nothing. But the whisper came. This time, not in the gym. Not in her head. Right here. Don't trust her. Clara's mouth went dry. Who? She whispered. The mirror didn't answer. But her phone buzzed on the bedside table. A text. From Mason. Meet me tomorrow. I found something in the gym's records. But you're not going to like it. Clara didn't sleep. She kept looking at the portrait in the mirror again and again, as if waiting for them to blink, or shift, or scream. When morning finally came, her face was pale and her hands trembled. She arrived at the gym early, and Mason led her to the archive room again. I wasn't going to tell you, he said, placing a thin file on the table. But you've already gone too far. Clara opened it. Inside were reports, old membership logs, and a single photo. Victoria. Standing beside Lydia. Smiling. But something about Victoria's expression in the photo chilled Clara to the bone. She knew her, Clara breathed. My sister knew Lydia. Mason nodded grimly. Not just knew her. She owned this place back then, before she rebranded it as Eden Wellness. Clara's world reeled. Her sister had lied. About everything. Clara paced the gym corridor, her mind a mess of memories and questions. Victoria had once owned Eden Wellness? No, not Eden. Back then, it had been called the Arcadia Club. A posh, exclusive retreat for the elite. And Lydia had worked there. Clara returned home with the documents Mason had let her borrow. She spread them across the floor plans, renovation records, and pages of internal staff notes. One detail jumped out. A sub-basement. Not listed in the new building plans. She called Mason immediately. "We have to go back," she said. "Tonight." Mason hesitated, but agreed. By midnight, they were standing at the gym's back entrance, torches in hand, the street eerily quiet. Inside, Clara led the way through the staff-only corridor, using an old key Mason had borrowed from the archive room. She stopped in front of a heavy metal door. "This wasn't here on any tour," she whispered. They descended a narrow staircase, each step creaking beneath their weight. The air grew cold and damp. At the bottom, a hallway stretched into darkness. They walked slowly, past rusted lockers and old equipment. Then they found it. A door. Black. Chipped. With one word scratched into the surface. "Cleanse." Clara's breath caught. She pushed the door. Inside was a room like a spa, but wrong. The walls were lined with one-way mirrors. A padded table sat in the center, and straps dangled from it. The smell of old disinfectant clung to the air like rot. Mason knelt beside a filing cabinet. "These are therapy records," he murmured. "Lydia's name is in here." Clara opened another drawer, and froze. Inside were tapes. Dozens of them. She slid one into the player on the desk. A voice crackled to life. "I don't want to do this anymore," came Lydia's voice. "Please. I want to leave." Then, another voice. Cold. "Come. You signed a contract, Lydia. You agreed to the process." Clara recognized that voice. It was Victoria. The tape ended in static. They stood in silence. Even the shadows seemed to retreat. Clara whispered. "She experimented on her." They heard it then. A creak. From the corridor behind them. They weren't alone. The night was thick with rain as Clara and Mason emerged from the maintenance tunnel behind the facility. Soaked, trembling, but alive. They didn't speak, just ran. Past the gates, past the trees, into the shadows of the city where Victoria's reach wasn't as tight. Clara had one goal now. Expose everything. Mason arranged a secret meeting with Lydia's former lawyer, someone who had once tried to sue the Mindset program into extinction. His name was Edward Thorne, and his interest reignited the moment Clara showed him the tapes. "You have no idea how long I've waited for this," Edward said, eyes gleaming. While Edward prepared legal action, Clara and Mason leaked clips of the tapes online. At first it seemed reckless. But within hours, #MindsetExposed was trending. Survivors of the program began speaking out. Some praised Clara. Others warned her to run. Victoria, silent at first, finally reappeared, in a carefully staged televised interview. "I built Mindset to help people," she declared. "The real criminals are those twisting my work into conspiracy theories." But her voice lacked the usual steel. Her eyes, once piercing, seemed nervous. Because she knew. Clara wasn't bluffing. The next day, Clara received an email. A private invitation. One night only. Victoria Norwood presents the final Mindset experience. Clara stared at the screen. "She wants to end this her way." "Don't go," Mason said. "She's unpredictable." "I have to," Clara whispered. "It's the only way to finish it." The event was held in the original Mindset auditorium, now cleared and restyled like a theater stage. A single spotlight lit the center. Guests, influencers, journalists, none knew what to expect. Then Victoria appeared. Dressed not in her usual suit, but in a white gown, eerily reminiscent of the uniforms used during the early sessions. She stepped into the light. "This," she said, "is my truth." What followed was part confession, part performance. She spoke of power, loss, the burden of expectation, and of her rivalry with Lydia. She never mentioned Clara. Not once. Until the final moment. "Some call me a villain," she said, voice cracking. "But what do you call a girl who was never loved properly?" Then she looked at Clara, seated in the front row, and smiled. A sound rang out. A slow-building siren. "Police." Clara stood. "It's over, Victoria." Victoria raised her hands in surrender. But as officers rushed the stage, she turned her gaze to Clara once more. "You didn't win," she whispered. "You just inherited the role." The night was thick with rain as Clara and Mason emerged from the maintenance tunnel behind the facility. Soaked, trembling, but alive. They didn't speak, just ran. Past the gates, past the trees, into the shadows of the city where Victoria's reach wasn't as tight. Clara had one goal now. Expose everything. Mason arranged a secret meeting with Lydia's former lawyer, someone who had once tried to sue the Mindset program into extinction. His name was Edward Thorne, and his interest reignited the moment Clara showed him the tapes. "You have no idea how long I've waited for this," Edward said, eyes gleaming. While Edward prepared legal action, Clara and Mason leaked clips of the tapes online. At first it seemed reckless. But within hours, #MindsetExposed was trending. Survivors of the program began speaking out. Some praised Clara. Others warned her to run. Victoria, silent at first, finally reappeared, in a carefully staged televised interview. "I built Mindset to help people," she declared. "The real criminals are those twisting my work into conspiracy theories." But her voice lacked the usual steel. Her eyes, once piercing, seemed nervous. Because she knew. Clara wasn't bluffing. The next day, Clara received an email. A private invitation. One night only. Victoria Norwood presents the final Mindset experience. Clara stared at the screen. "She wants to end this her way." "Don't go," Mason said. "She's unpredictable." "I have to," Clara whispered. "It's the only way to finish it." The event was held in the original Mindset auditorium, now cleared and restyled like a theater stage. A single spotlight lit the center. Guests, influencers, journalists, none knew what to expect. Then Victoria appeared. Dressed not in her usual suit, but in a white gown, eerily reminiscent of the uniforms used during the early sessions. She stepped into the light. "This," she said, "is my truth." What followed was part confession, part performance. She spoke of power, loss, the burden of expectation, and of her rivalry with Lydia. She never mentioned Clara. Not once. Until the final moment. "Some call me a villain," she said, voice cracking. "But what do you call a girl who was never loved properly?" Then she looked at Clara, seated in the front row, and smiled. A sound rang out. A slow-building siren. "Police." Clara stood. "It's over, Victoria." Victoria raised her hands in surrender. But as officers rushed the stage, she turned her gaze to Clara once more. "You didn't win," she whispered. "You just inherited the role."